Welcome back to the DTF Film Sessions. I'm Max Dean. You can find me on Twitter at @TheMaxDean, and I'm here with Nick Merriam, our Director of Draft Content and Scouting. You can find him at Nick with Sports on Twitter, and we are going to continue the wide receiver run right now, taking a look at Jaxon Smith-Njigba, the wide receiver from Ohio State. So Njigba is an interesting player, a bit more refined than Quentin Johnson, who was our last breakdown here. It's our 7th breakdown. We're on a pretty good pace. We're trying to hit about top 50. We'll see if we get it done. But yeah, man, Nick, how you doing today?
Doing well. This has been a player that I have started out the year extremely high on. Was disappointed we didn't really get to see him play at all this year, and so it's a fun breakdown for me because it's how we had this thing last year or 2 years ago where players didn't play immediately the year before the draft because they opted out due to COVID, and now we're kind of seeing a guy who didn't opt out, just didn't play because he was injured. And how does that affect your draft stock? Especially with unanswered questions in his case, I think it'll be a little different than the Jamar Chases of the world.
Yeah, so not elite size, but we'll see if this is actually what he measures in at. I wonder if he's actually 6'1", 198 in the combine. I would not be at all surprised if he comes up just a little bit shorter and potentially smaller than that. Any thoughts on that before we jump into the tape?
Yeah, I think he's probably a little smaller. He might be more like 5'11", 190. We'll see. It's not really a big part of his game, so I'm not too concerned about it. But they like to round out these numbers to get him to 6', 200 if they can.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, for sure. And in college, you can get away with just kind of throw it in whatever you want to. But again, we're not going to spend a lot of time outside of looking at the tape for Jaxon Smith-Njigba because he's not really. I mean, everyone is a projection coming into the draft, but it's a little bit different when you're looking at size, weight, speed measurables versus a player like him who has a pretty developed route tree and catching ability. So let's jump right into it. We got 7 clips that we want to break down.
Yeah. So right off the bat, like he is a slot receiver, and people's concern is if he can get off of press. And we saw a guy like Justin Jefferson consistently do that in the NFL level, despite not really showing it in college and become an excellent player. So it's possible that Jaxon Smith-Njigba can be that. And the athleticism we'll talk about a little bit more in depth. But early here, he plays from the slot like a veteran already. He has kind of the savviness that you look for a receiver. This is the guy that I think if you're just a team that needs to get better at this position group and you're looking for a high floor player, he has extremely low bust potential. Like I think his floor is a good slot receiver who starts for you for a while. You're hoping that he can become a guy who can play more positions. But for now, you kind of see this presence from a guy who really, this is like his first full year playing at Ohio State, knows what he's doing. So this is just a simple crossing route. He's going to end up settling into the space underneath the too high look from Penn State. And CJ Stroud is going to go to him here. He's going to be open. It's an easy throw. He's the open receiver. It takes a certain receiver to settle into space and give your quarterback a nice little window to throw the ball. It takes an even better receiver, in my opinion, to come back to this ball, cut down the angle, and make it easier for you to make the catch as well as a quarterback to kind of get it there, especially if he's under pressure. He might not get enough throw power on this. It just makes the whole process easier. But it takes another level of thinking to then not just get to that ball, but settle in a spot where the sticks are and fall for the first down, right? There's a lot of these type of thought processes in his game where you can tell that he is completely aware of the situation of the football game and is allowing his team to advance the ball downfield because of all these things going on that he understands. And this is like a sophomore who hasn't really played yet doing this. Mm-hmm. This is a guy who was NFL ready last year, and it's things like this that prove it to you.
Yeah, so basically he's going to come over here, across the field. He's going to curl around this defender, and then he comes back, which is good because he's creating space for himself and for his quarterback. But what I love, like you were just mentioning, but right here, when he gets to the sticks, he doesn't run through it and then try and catch the ball and then turn back upfield to get the first down. Even though that would make the catch easier, he drops himself down right at the sticks and gets underneath it. Mm-hmm. And so he makes sure he gets the first down. That's a lot of awareness for a player of his age.
And this is a player that really likes to catch the ball, coming back to it and try to pick up those extra yards. So it goes to show you the discipline here to just pick up that first down. So again, we're going to have a lot of good slot looks here. And so we're going to just talk about the savviness that you kind of need to make it work at that position early in the NFL, at least high enough to be able to get drafted in the first round. This, again, just a crossing route. He's going to be the open guy. He's going to be the guy you want to look for. He's going to get across this defender, and then he's going to accelerate to space. Very, very simple thing. Just different levels of speed. Have that extra gear so that you can kind of give a little bit of an illusion to the defender that you're not running as fast as he thinks you are. And then once that space becomes open, he accelerates to it to make that throw easier for Stroud. This is more apparent on the back end look when you actually see him accelerate once he clears his defender. And even so, it's not even right when he clears the defender. It's really when he clears the linebackers underneath him too, because that's when he knows that this throw is going to be effectively going to him no matter what. So you can see him kind of lean a little forward there, right?
Yeah. Yep. Just different. I mean, I don't think I have anything I can add to that.
That's, again, just simple stuff to start off. This is what, this is kind of the early things you want to work on in route running that can allow you to get open. And then how do you work off of that now? And I think for him, he has a really, really nice developed after the catch ability that's different from any player that I've scouted before. And I think it's the type of run after catch ability that has had people questioning his athletic ability, perhaps reasonably. So this is a seam route into the cover 6 hole, right? That's all it is.
Mm-hmm.
Wide open, easy catch. He has the awareness, and we see this time and time again, to, as he's catching this ball, he's looking it in, to swerve inside all at once to avoid that safety, right? He is operating at a level of kind of instinctiveness that not many receivers have. A lot of them, you'd rather see them kind of catch this ball and cut immediately upfield or try and make that safety miss. And he just kind of changes his angle, and allows himself to score. And not only that, a lot of guys you probably see when they kind of get parallel to the yard lines on this play, maybe not have the acceleration to then break away from the defenders underneath him who are chasing him, but he has it. And I think people will talk about his long speed. It's not great, but he certainly has the quick burst to get up to, gear 2, gear 3 that allows him to kind of rip off these extra yards.
Yeah, I think there's a lot really good here. So first thing is, even though he's going outside, right here, he gives that inside move. So he gives the inside move, he really pushes the defender to give him outside leverage. So the defender has inside leverage, and he has outside. And then he wraps around, gets the ball, makes the guy miss, but also he knows that he has that blocker. You know what I mean? So not only does he make this guy miss by going, instead of turning upfield, going around, he also gives himself the angle to have number 4 here come across, so he doesn't turn upfield after that either. So there's just a lot of awareness for a young player.
He's a very smart receiver. That's the theme we're going to kind of go through here. And I think the blocking thing's excellent that you brought that up, because I kind of forgot to write it down. But that's going to come up a lot on this tape too. He is really good at giving his blockers angles. Again, quick twitch and body control after the catch. No long speed. He's not a guy who's going to juke you out. Now, maybe he is. Maybe this is just so easy for him that he's just able to kind of take angles and that's something we'll talk about a little bit later. But again, this is an actual press rep. We don't see a whole lot of this, but quick twitch out there, nice little shake, get him open, quick route.
That's really nice.
Run circles around him, right?
Yeah.
This is the stuff I think Garrett Wilson did when he was at Ohio State. And people were like, he's probably a good athlete, but I don't know if he's going to run a fast 40 time. And then he ended up running in the 4.3s. He literally runs a circle around this corner. And it's because he kind of is dictating the flow of the play in terms of, I shake you in outside, back to inside. Then now I have you scared because I've beaten you and I'd be going deep. Now I'm a step ahead of you, right? So then when we stop my feet, now we've got you kind of wrapping back inside because now you're outside of me to try and make this tackle. So if I spin the opposite way, now all of a sudden I have you with your feet going back inside and I can move back upfield. And again, it's these kind of subtle movements that allow him to get free a lot on the plays we're going to look at. He doesn't have the long speed to ultimately score a touchdown here, but I would argue that the value of getting those extra 20 yards is almost more rare than a guy who can like just get open downfield and score, because those type of players that are just straight up deep threats, they do that really well, but they do it less consistently. And Jaxon Smith-Njigba is the type of player that might have the ability to just catch these curl routes almost every time and turn these 5-yard plays into 20-yard plays.
Well, there's just nothing about this play that's not planned. So the first thing is he drops his foot back here and gives the head shake. So he's, giving you the look that he's going to release outside, then immediately comes inside. And then he knows exactly where he's going to make his break. And he makes it look like it's an in-breaking route. So he actually forces the defender to wrap around him. Like, he doesn't just stop and settle down. He gives that little subtle inside, like, I'm cutting across the field, I'm going to run a slant or a cross or whatever. And then settles down, gets the ball, forces the defender to give him enough space that he knows exactly where he's turning to come back upfield. And then once he gets to the second level, it's just there's no wasted motion at all whatsoever. And that's one of the things about Garrett Wilson, was like he had some wasted motion with his stuff, but it's like that's about as clean as it gets for a college receiver.
And I think the game is slow for him. Like, I just think that we don't see kind of the dynamic juke moves and the insane, like, hard effort acceleration to get around defenders as much, because I think he just sees the game at a level that he doesn't need to. He knows what direction needs to go in. He can tell subtly what the defender, what direction they're trying to, engage towards. And he takes advantage of this stuff so well. And there's kind of an innate ability there that I think is rare. Again, more of the same here. It's an RPO against single high. We're going to get a little subtle move to get open here on a quick run. CJ Stroud does a good ball to throw this ball out. Does a good job to get that ball out to his playmaker. And again, it's just angles. It's just, I'm moving back inside. The pursuit is coming towards me. Let's stop on a dime here, cut back outside, and kind of swerve around the defender and get to space. It looks simple, but it's not. He has this strength kind of to break ankle tackles. We see this consistently. Like, he's not a guy that gets tackled from behind ever. Again, 2 of them, actually 3 of them, right? We might give him 3 broken tackles on that play from SIS data, because it's just, he is getting through contact on these plays, and he's creating angles that it's not easy to tackle him, but you're getting opportunities. And as long as he can kind of just run a little bit faster than you, he's going to get those extra yards.
So right here, it's just these little things. So he makes his break, and as he catches the ball, he will already begin cutting up field. Like, you'll see that as he catches the ball, the next 2 steps that he takes are already turning up the field. So he's actually like turning the angle of his lower torso mid catch, which is pretty impressive considering there's a defender right on him. So you'll see it. Comes off a break, like, he caught the ball and his next 2 steps were already up the field. So I haven't really watched much of him before, and I didn't get to take a chance to look at these clips before we started the review, but this is really impressive stuff.
Yeah, and this is game tape. Like, he gets 350 yards in this game. Everyone watched this Utah Rose Bowl, and he was awesome. But it's not your common 350-yard receiving game. Like, it doesn't look like the most dominant tape in the world, but it's just these, like, little things, right? Like, I just caught the ball quick, taking the correct angle. It's almost like it's perfect decision making, just enough athleticism and unreal body control to kind of do these things simultaneously that the defenders aren't expecting. You kind of expect as a defender, like, the action of a runner is going to kind of be one thing than another. For him, it's like the first step in his play and the second step in his play overlap each other. He's already moving on to what he's going to do next before he gets to finishing the catch, and often, we say things like, don't take your eye off the ball because you'll drop it. And I think some guys have problems with that. He manages to never have that problem, right? This is a guy that probably is hitting the jugs machine 250 times a day, and is just he's outworking his opponents right now. He's definitely grinding the film too.
When I did a podcast before the season started with Matt Waldman, he talked about how you can have different facets of your game, right? Different, let's call them let's call them just train cars, just to keep it simple. So like you have this train car and you have this train car, and they are one technique of something, right? But a lot of guys, they get that technique down, but they can only chain it after one specific other train car. Like that comes next for them. They
Mhm.
can't just interchange where each train car matches up with each other. And like for him, it is very clear that every single train car that he has, I don't know why I've selected this as a metaphor, but every single one he has can interlock with any other one on any given play seamlessly, right? Like the Matt worded it much better than I did, but
It's elite
basically,
fluidity. Like
yes, it is.
his transition of actions is just better than anyone else you will watch,
Hmm.
and
But
that's as
there's
simple as I can
nothing.
explain it.
Yeah, but there's just nothing that he can't do after doing something else. Like the the chain reaction for each move that he makes, and each part of the play can be interchanged at any given time, and that's what I think is going to make him pretty special at the NFL level. All
Mhm.
right.
Play six. All right. So just expanding on body control, because when we talk about the physical part of that fluidity and that transition from action to action, body control is really what matters here. Is his ability to stay balanced through these kind of what he's asking a lot from himself physically, and it does in fact translate to the catch point for him. Here, we're just going to watch him high point the ball here on a route, a seam route of the backfield, and he's going to catch it in stride, high point it, and just keep running, no wasted actions, right? And he makes it again. This just looks simple. Like you might watch this initially on TV cop, you're like, oh wow, Jaxon Smith-Njigba makes a catch just running and catch jumping, and that's kind of cool. Well, again, like I think this is really hard stuff. He is eyeing this ball in from outside the hash, comes across the hash to catch it in full motion in midair, and does not lose speed at all.
You can't tell how far he's reaching because we're kind of head on at this right now, but I'll go back to it uh, from the other angle again.
This is a
But
basketball play.
yeah, it is, and it's just so it comes around, and then you see he's reaching pretty far right here. He's elevated. His legs are outspread. A lot of guys are going to catch that with their heel coming down and stop their momentum a little bit, or maybe not continue to have the awareness of every other player that's around him. I mean, you look at this, right now, there are 5 defenders who are closer to him than any one of his own players. And what he's going to do is he's going to reposition himself so that he hits the ground in stride, loses no speed, and then what does he do? Sets himself up a blocker.
Mm-hmm.
I'm falling in love with this guy.
Yep. And then the last one, we're going to look at more body control and hands. This is the touchdown that kind of ends up winning them the game effectively. Simple. He has leverage. This isn't like This isn't the best route in the world. He's just running kind of a fade. Stroud gives him a really good ball, but full speed, body control, hands on display here. Good tracking downfield. This is the type of play that makes me think ultimately he's going to be completely fine playing as an outside receiver.
Yeah. Yep. And again, it's just the subtle movements in route that don't take away any speed. Let's watch that again. I'll try and pause it right where he's at the sideline making that catch. That's a hard catch to make.
Mm-hmm.
He's leaning outside. The ball's coming over his inside shoulder, and he's got a defender on him, and he just makes it look like it's easy.
Yep. He's this is a guy that if we want to come back to being us and just talk about him a little bit for a second, because I think he's a guy who fell down boards, and there were rumors that teams are like, oh, he might be a day 2 pick just because he doesn't play. No one knows if he can't play slot. And I think we could be doing this again the way it happened with Justin Jefferson, where Garrett Wilson and Chris Olave called him the best player on the team. CJ Stroud called him the best player on the team. Justin Fields went on an interview with Pardon My Take and says, I want that guy on my team. He was a sophomore on this tape. Like, he had really played a full season. He hasn't developed fully as an athlete, hasn't been in that locker room, weight room and really working on his body. And this year he's probably done that despite having injuries. And then he's going to get into an NFL weight room. He's going to work with some veterans and continue to develop his game. This is the guy, to me, that I think we're maybe sleeping on his ceiling a little bit. He has definitely a high floor, but we're probably forgetting how special he can be still, because we never really saw his full development curve as a collegiate player. And we're going to see it in the NFL. And then he still has probably an NFL development curve that we're going to see beyond that as well. He is maybe the highest floor player in this draft class. And we're underrating him because of maybe how poorly he might perform at the combine. I think what we've gone over here is if he runs, a 4.48, which I think some people are thinking he's going to run the 4.5s. I think he might run lower 4.3s, and that would be impressive. 4.4 is like a 4.44. So like what Jefferson ran, and people thought he was going to run the 4.5s. But what's going to happen is he's going to have an elite vertical jump. He's going to have an elite broad jump. And those things translate to explosiveness. And I think that is clear on his tape.
Yeah, well, he's the most natural looking receiver that, I've seen in a while. I mean, even Garrett Wilson, he reminds me a little bit more of Chris Olave, to be honest, because everything is a little bit more refined, but Olave played a different role on their offense, so it doesn't necessarily look the same. Garrett Wilson, I don't think is the best comp because he had a great natural feel for it. Yeah, but I know what you mean. I know what you mean, but I think Garrett Wilson is just like a little bit of a freakier athlete, just like a little bit more of like a lateral cut type of guy. And I don't know how much you can necessarily like formulate run after the catch stuff for Njigba. I think what you want are him running routes and then catching the ball and then maybe making a play down the field. But he's a little bit of a different player. But I think the thing that happens is these guys just get underrated because of size. I mean, I would say Garrett Wilson was the best receiver in the class, and maybe Chris Olave, depending on what you like out of your guys. But Drake London, as much as I loved him, he went first overall because he's bigger. I'm not sure, was it unwarranted? I don't know, but I mean, there were a lot of reasons that I thought Garrett Wilson was better, and yet he was still the first one selected. And there's a very real chance that we could see that again. I mean, could we see Quentin Johnson go higher than Jaxon Smith-Njigba? Very good chance. Is it warranted? I have a hard time saying yes after what we've just watched after our past two reviews.
And I think we're underrating the slot position, and we still are. And Elijah Moore's been a very good receiver too for the Jets when he's been playing, and Garrett Wilson's a guy who's played in the slot. And we look at what Cooper Kupp did. Like, some people think Cooper Kupp's the best receiver in football, just didn't really play a bunch last year because he got injured. And he's a guy who really just plays out of the slot. Jefferson produced a lot of the slot this year. There's no reason that a guy can't play slot receiver for you and be a MVP level wide receiver. And if he can figure out how to play on the outside, that's great. But there's no reason to think he can't be a transformative talent not playing at the X position.
Yeah, I agree. All right. Remember, you can find us at Defiant Takes on all social media outlets for Defiant Takes Football. You can also find the site, defianttakesfootball.com, where we have articles and player profiles going up for the offseason. You can find all of our player breakdowns for the 2023 prospects on the YouTube channel. You can also find our brick wall breakdowns, which are offensive line centric tape breakdowns with Kyron Samuels. And we are live every Monday and Thursday. And right now we're looking at prospects, ranking them into tiers via Nick here. And we're also previewing the offseason for all of the divisions. So we've got a lot of content out there if you like what we do. And we all hope to see you again very soon.